women of my age at that time, if it was August and it was hot, maybe they would be topless, but I mean, that was the weather. But then too, we used body paint. You know, you would use bear grease and dyes to keep the insects off of you, to protect your skin, sunblock. I mean, all of these things. So Pocahontas usually was portrayed as she grew up later as the iconic Virginia Indian woman. She was married at a very young age to a young war captain named Kocoum. They may have had children. In his story, they didn't want to let people know that. They had to pretend that she was this young virgin that was married to the widower. Okay? And when she got older and people realized that maybe, you know, she was worth something in terms of political gains, and she was kidnapped thanks to the Potawatomis and held in captivity and then brainwashed. Now we call it the Stockholm Syndrome or the Patty Hearst Syndrome, when you're brainwashed. We remember. We're old enough to remember what I'm talking about. You probably said, what's she talking about? You understand what I'm saying too? Okay, there you go. So here she is. She's grown up now. She's married to this widower. She gets a job. She's working for the Virginia Company of London. On the payroll. What's she going to do? Well, she's a celebrity. She's Princess Pocahontas, the daughter, favored daughter of the paramount chief Powhatan II, ruler of the Powhatan Confederacy of 32 Indian nations, all the way from North Carolina to today's Washington, D.C. She goes over to England, and she's dressed up as a proper English noblewoman would be dressed up. But what do they do with the tattoos? Makeup. Heavy white makeup that's arsenic-based. You remember that. Remember the Shakespearean sonnets about pockmarks and what have you? Arsenic is bad for your complexion. Okay? So they covered all the tattoos and the brown up, and they made all these portraits of her. And Simon Van de Pass did an etching of her. And this was supposed to be what Pocahontas looked like. See that little mouth? See the smooth face? But if you look closely, you'll see some spots there. The arsenic paint couldn't cover up all the tattoo marks, but I saw them, I knew they were there. So I decided it was time to unmask Pocahontas and to show her for who she really was, so that indigenous women could take pride in how they looked and realize they didn't have to wear the mask. It's okay. You don't have to wear the mask. It's okay.
Wow, that's fascinating. I was interested in this piece when I first saw it because of the sort of European, attire, the depiction of Pocahontas.
She could hardly breathe in that corset.
I believe it. Yeah, most people I don't think could. But could you tell us a little bit? You do a wide variety of different artistic mediums, but you describe yourself as a mixed media artist. Could you tell us a little bit about how you created this piece?
Well, I'm a retired educator, 31 years, elementary to college, what have you, here overseas. And one thing we always started out with growing up was crayons, coloring books, right? We remember, And then it became trendy for adults to de-stress and have all kinds of coloring books. You know what I'm talking about?
I've got some.
Isn't it something? Is it still the fad, or this, you know, is it kind of... So anyway, so I was thinking about Pocahontas one time, and I said, I want to get an image of Pocahontas out there the way she really looked. And using today's technology, how could I do that? So I came up with the idea of using a computer. And I got the help of my husband, because he's our webmaster who's sitting too close to the painting. You need to move your chair forward, please. Please come up about 3 feet away from that man's painting, okay?
I won't fall back on it.
Using the computer, the etching of the official image of Pocahontas became a mask instead of the feather fan, all right? And in looking at the actual paintings that John White did of Virginia Indians in the 1600s, some of which I had a chance to really study during my Fulbright year in England. I had a reader's pass for the British Library, and I could actually go in, and without wearing rubber gloves or using page turners, they would give me books from the 15 and 1600s to look through, and artwork from the 15 and 1600s to just touch and do whatever I wanted to on that table. Can you imagine? It wasn't like that at the Library of Congress.
Yeah.
Oh no, you know the difference, right?
I do,
Okay.
absolutely, yeah.
Didn't even take my purse.
Yeah.
So anyway, no lockers. So I looked at the paintings that John White did of Virginia Indians from the 1600s, and I think there was a publication, America 1585 or something. Are you familiar with that publication? And you remember it had full color illustrations in it, right? Okay. And they were different from the wood engravings that Theodore de Bry did, because de Bry's wood engravings were done for book publications. And when you print en masse, anybody who knows about printing knows that every color needs a new plate, and it's more money. So Theodore de Bry changed the appearance of the Indians, but not John White, because he did watercolors, all right? And so a lot of times people would use the prototypes of the wood engravings of Theodore de Bry for Virginia Indian imagery, such as this. Okay? And they would use imagery from other cultures. For example, the Three Graces from Italy, remember that? Here you go, the 3 women in the middle of the dance circle. They wouldn't be like that. And they definitely wouldn't have naked butt cheeks pointing out at you either. But so that's why I use my marker to, edit a little bit, you know what I'm saying? But sex sells, okay, sex
absolutely.
sells. So the face is from John White. All right? And I was trying to be more true to the subject. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. No,
And so, what do? Okay, use the computer, did all this moving around, and then I decided to blow it up and color it using markers and colored pencils. Was it a relaxing exercise? Was it de-stressing? Oh yes, it was. It really was. So that's how that came about.
Neat. Yeah, I think that's fascinating that there's this historic, that it's a sort of interpretation of a historic representation.
If
So
I'm
you're
using
gonna-
too many words, you have to excuse me. I'm recovering from a concussion,
No, you're.
and sometimes it affects you a little way. But I sound lucid, okay?
Yeah.
Do I? Okay, thank you. I'll tell the doctor when I see him next.
So something interesting that I read about you is that you mentioned that you come from a family of 29 practicing artists, and that was a big part.
So many. How
Yeah,
many?
and that's a lot of people that could be sort of
Isn't that a lot of
competitive.
people?
Yeah. So
How could that happen?
So, how did that shape you becoming an artist? Growing up in a family, growing up around all of that.
Well, I'll be 72 in October, so I don't give a damn anymore, okay? When you come from a large family, if you don't develop your own persona, you don't eat.
Right.
And you get used to the idea of trying to assert yourself among the multitude, all right? And my maternal grandfather was a bigamist, and that's why my mother was number 13 of 21 children. I see your eyes going, pow!
A lot of kids, yeah.
Well, see, that's why he had to be a moonshiner. Because,
Yeah.
he didn't have money for the license like the Kennedy family.
Right.
Okay? And, but, it had its perks. He was fluent in Greek and Italian, and now the Chaconas family is very established in Washington high society. Nick Chaconas was one of his partners years ago. But, we don't have a word in the indigenous languages of America that says art. Art is the life. It's part of life. We automatically make artistic, aesthetic choices with everything we do. You don't put slop on a plate when you plan and design a meal. You want the food to look good, don't you? And when you get dressed, sometimes there's a difference between wearing flip-flops and clothes you wear when you're cleaning up and doing housework and scrubbing floors, and when you want to feel nice, you know what I mean? So, an extension of that for professions, some people were gifted with being able to use colors. Some people were gifted with being able to draw very realistically. Some people were gifted with being able to sing or compose pictures and photography. So in order to function adequately in mainstream American life, you have to acquire tools, all right? And that's where education comes in. You have certain innate gifts that God gives you. And you have to excuse me if I use the G word, but we are a God-centered people. And I say my morning prayers. I give thanks to God for making all of this possible for all of us, okay? And so we have been gifted with certain abilities, and in order to make a living, you say, what do I have? What do I have to bring to it? And that's why there's so many artists in my family, because God gifted people in my family with certain gifts that transferred over into art, even if it could be medical illustration.
Right.
And making replacement body parts for people. I remember my sister had an eyeball business going on, in Vietnam. She used to do work for Walter Reed, making noses for people who lost them. And they were attached to glasses sometimes, or ears, hands. I remember she freaked me out one time. She threw something on my lap, and it was some kind of collection of skin, what she calls skin tabs, because you have to match up somebody's color exactly. But can you imagine how creepy that was? Like, heroes,
I have a collection of museum prop films. We have some of those things in this field too.
okay,
So,
anyway.
well, that's